Hi, I'm Gavin, and welcome back to the Sound Project. We get to sit down today with a good friend, AJ Fager from Haverstick, and thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've known each other for a while, and we've worked with Haverstick on a lot of different projects. And but maybe just tell the audience a little bit about like what you do and how you got into doing what you do today.
Yeah, so Haverstick is a professional installation integrator. We started in 2009. My background goes significantly further back than that. I, for some reason, knew I wanted to be an audio guy when I was 6 years old.
Wow, 6, okay.
Yeah, so no clue why, but I just was raised running sound at church, and just kind of one thing led to another. And I had a very unique opportunity presented actually when I turned 18 and started doing professional installation work at that time. So just kind of out of nowhere, moved to Washington, D.C. and started working for integrators on the East Coast. Moved back to Indiana to go to school and never really looked back. I mean, so I went to school for a little bit for electrical engineering, and then we started Haverstick in 2009, and then I unfortunately ran out of time to finish school, but
yeah, you had other things to do. So.
Exactly. I was very busy. So anyway, but and then the rest is history. So just kind of been doing it ever since, one project at a time, one customer at a time, and we've built to over 60 employees and 3 office locations, and it's been a really fun ride.
That's awesome. Yeah, we actually Haverstick Design started in 2009 as well. So it's same kind of journey there. But it's with the audio background. You saying you knew you wanted to do that when you were 6. Like, were you into the musical side of things, or was it more like the technology?
So it's funny. I've only ever been in love with the technology.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like, I'm not a musician.
Okay.
I've never been a musician. I mean, aside from just being in ancillary music programs, I've always just kind of been in love with the technology. I've obviously developed a knack for music, having been around it my whole life, since so much of it revolves around music. But yeah, it's just always been the technology that's fascinated me. I told someone the other day that, if it has to travel across a wire to get from A to B, it's something that I'm interested in.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, you picked the right field to do that.
Exactly. So whether it's audio, whether it's video, lighting, broadcasts, comms, I tend to be fascinated by all of it. So, yeah.
When you started in 2009, did you envision what Haverstick is today back then, or was it, for myself, like when I started in 2009, I had the naive notion that it would just be myself my entire career, and then I'd retire and it'd be done. And then obviously it's not gone that way.
Yeah, I think you have to have a very high level of naivety to start a business.
That's true.
And it just is what it is. It's like, you always say, like, could I even start today? And you almost have too much knowledge. You know what I mean? You're almost afraid of all of the potential roadblocks and everything else, because you better understand them now as potential roadblocks. You're more cautious now, things like that. But it's like, when you start out and you don't really have a lot to lose, you just kind of go for it.
Yeah, that's very true. That's now that I think about it, it's like when I started, it wasn't. Yeah, I wasn't thinking about the things I think about today.
Right, exactly. And I would say the same thing was true for us. There was definitely a high level of naivety on my part. Don't get me wrong. I think we really started Haverstick just because when I moved back to Indiana, the quality on the East Coast was very high. Sure. It was very competitive. And when I moved back, I was like, you know what, I can do this, and I can do it better than anyone locally that's doing it.
Sure.
And sometimes that's true, sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
Like, it is what it is.
But you have to have the confidence in your skills and everything.
Exactly. And we do have some really strong partners out there that are occasionally, it's not uncommon for us to partner with other companies on big projects. And it is what it is. I think that's probably the most unique thing about what Haverstick has had to become. especially integration. I think the biggest thing that I didn't visualize, because I always kind of knew what I wanted. I was like, okay, I want this business to grow. I want to be able to employ people, and here's who we want to become on the technology side. Yeah. The side that I would say is different is, and I say this all the time, is the construction side. We're technology integrators, but the truth is we're construction workers who know how to use computers.
Right. Yeah.
We have guys on a project right now that are doing rope access work to lower a speaker array.
Right.
We've got a rigging project going on next month where, we've got, hammer drills and concrete work and all this other stuff. I mean, we've become, the industry as a whole has demanded that we become a very specialized construction trade.
Yes.
And that's probably the biggest difference that I would say I didn't visualize is having to deal with all of those things and processes and just having to learn how to do all that as well. I mean, fortunately, I think the production industry lends itself very well to the skill set of having staff that are figure-outers. We have I can't begin to speak highly enough of every single person on our team. And the reason is just because they're all handymen. They all know how to build. They all have skills beyond just what it takes to do on a computer.
Yeah, and ultimately every job is different, but usually you show up on a job site, I'm sure, and there's something that's maybe not quite what was shown on the plans, and you got to figure it out.
That's every job site.
And so it's something where you look for people, and I do the same thing, hiring people that work for me. Like our number one in our core values is solve problems. It's just like you have to be able to do that. And if you show up to a job site and something's not exactly the way you thought it was going to be, and that person just throws their hands up and say, "I can't work with this. I'm leaving." That doesn't move the project forward. It doesn't help the client, and so it's good to have those people.
Well, and there's also there's so many facets of the industry. There's installation, there's consulting and design, there's production. And I think that's a strong value for all of those. I mean, especially on the production side of things. You can't show up and not have a solution.
Right.
There's a show.
Yeah.
There's people with paying tickets. Everything else. And
sometimes you have to make it up as you go and problem solve and troubleshoot, and you're doing all of that with the pressure of someone looking over your shoulder while you're doing it. So it takes a unique individual to be able to do all of that.
Yeah. Yep.
As far as like Force Tech is concerned, what type of projects are you typically getting involved with? I see we've worked on some together, but then I also see the other things that you're doing. It seems like it's a wide range of applications. Yeah,
so I would say that the interesting thing about our market is it has almost become more segmented. When I started professionally, I actually started in broadcast television. So I obviously had a long background of audio just experience, just growing up in it, growing up around it, running sound for all of my friends had bands growing up in the 90s.
Sure.
So I was their audio guy because I was the one who bought all the equipment and lugged it around everywhere for them. So I'm glad I got that out of my life early on. But I would say the first amount of professional experience I had was in broadcast television. So we were doing broadcast integration on the East Coast, large television facilities, and then that developed a very unique skill set in me. And then when I moved back to Indiana, I worked for companies doing straight AV. And a lot of people don't think about that, but really the industry is very segmented in as far as skill sets goes. Normally there's AV companies, there's broadcast integration companies, there's big audio companies, and like it's a little bit more specialized. I would say something that's been unique to Force Tech, at least in our region, has been kind of our ability to take all of those on. We've really been able to scale down as well as we scale up.
Sure.
The room we're sitting in, which I'm sure we'll get to eventually, it's a great example of that. We're an Indiana company. We stay in Indiana and pretty much every state that touches it. And unless you want to travel a lot and become one of those specialized integrators, it can be very hard to scale up to a project like this.
That's true.
But fortunately, just the experience that I have and our engineering team has, that they were kind of able to bring to the table, as well as the other local partner on this project, Mid-America Sound, we were kind of all able to come together and just make this happen.
Yeah.
So
we haven't addressed it yet. What we're sitting in is the Palladium in Carmel, and they went through a sound system upgrade project, and we were involved on the acoustical testing and kind of studying the existing system, the previous system, and seeing what pitfalls there were, and like maybe where it was lacking, and to be able to help you with data that you could use for your design. But it's a beautiful space that we're in, and really amazing performances that happen here. And they're just looking for a newer sound system. I think that how old was the previous one? Maybe 10 or 12
it was original
years?
to the building, and the building was built, I believe, actually in 2009, maybe. So almost like the same year we started, maybe.
Okay. And
it may have been right after that. Maybe it was 2000. I remember hearing when it was being built.
Sure. Yes, I do too. And
I was almost naive enough at the time to think maybe we could
get that. Yeah. Yeah. We had to build up to that. But yeah, I mean, maybe talk a little bit about this project in general, and some of the challenges that you faced, and how you overcame those.
Yeah. So I mean, honestly, the project-wise, you definitely made our work very easy. Very much so related to the building scanning and just all of it's a very unique space. It's probably not wrong to say that there's probably not another space like this in the world.
Right. Yeah.
And just a lot of unique angles, a lot of uniqueness to the building, and obviously, if an audio guy designed every single building would be a big box.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? With
Sure.
with some acoustical treatment on the walls, obviously, but still, at the end of the day, it's not an easy room to design placement for, things like that. Fortunately, we were able to do all of the pre-design with L Acoustics and Mid-America Sound and Sound Vision using your model. I do remember your model actually crashed our computer a few times.
There's a lot of information in that one.
So yeah, we definitely had to upgrade the GPU and a few other things to open the model. But once it was all open, we were good for a little bit.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And then aside from the acoustic and and the speaker selection side, was also the mechanical side. We're moving from a active system to a passive system. So every box that was in here used to be powered, and now they're passive, and we have amplifiers up in the attic space. Every box that is in here moves. So we had to do some custom testing with our director of engineering, Alex Moon. He reached out to the company that designed the original cable reels that were built for AC power.
Yeah.
And us being engineers, we thought to ourselves, I mean, why won't audio pass over this just fine? So we ended up doing some testing in the shop. The nice thing about L Acoustics is they actually have a process built into their amplifiers that accurately measures the load on the far end of the amplifier. So in other words, they can tell you if something's wrong with that signal chain.
Sure.
So you can actually just put in some values and say, hey, we're running, here's our amplifier, here's our speaker, we're running, 100 feet of cable, or however many feet of cable it is, and it'll essentially test that workflow for you.
Okay.
So we actually took the slip rings from the manufacturer and put them in that workflow and tested it, and the amp came back and said everything's fine. And we're like, all right, well, this is going to work.
Good. It's going to work. That's awesome. Yeah. There's so much. How long did it take to do the full install for this? I know there's so much planning in the design phase of it, but then you have to install it.
The on-site portion was 2 weeks. And it was intentionally 2 weeks. There were a lot, I will definitely commend the city of Carmel for putting the whole process together. I mean, they really did a phenomenal job to make our life easy. And what I mean by that is, we had, everything was kind of laid out on the front end. Here's here's the way it needs to happen. Here's this. And you also have to remember this was in the middle of a component shortage.
Yeah.
So, we had to deal with that. It took almost, I want to say it took a little bit over a year from the date of order to the date of the speakers arriving.
Right.
But fortunately, the city of Carmel knew that. They had very realistic expectations. They knew what was happening, and they also knew what they wanted.
Yeah.
And these upgrades don't happen often.
Yeah.
The original PA was original to the building.
Yeah.
So I think they made a very wise choice that even in a season of need relative to needing to upgrade, they knew it needed to happen, all of those things, they were still able to make the wise choice and say, it's worth waiting for the right manufacturer, all of those things.
Yeah. So. Well, yeah, it was a really fun project to be involved with, and with it being, it's right down the street from kind of where our office is, and this is our home, but yeah, working with you guys, it makes it very easy because you think of all the details, and you did an awesome job with it. So I know that too, this is one example of the work that you do, but I know that you've done work at like IMS, like Indianapolis Motor Speedway as well.
So we've done audio upgrades for the past 3 years for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. There's more to come there relative to audio upgrades. Again, just a really strong engineering and installation team that really brings those. It's a lot of phases, and they really kind of bring it out every year and just make it phenomenal. There was actually, it's a funny story there. There was actually a section that hadn't been upgraded, and we just kind of retuned what they had, and maybe we almost did too good of a job on retuning what they had, because they were like, oh, this sounds great, and they thought it was new, and I'm like, well, we'll see.
That's awesome.
As well as locally, it's been the Fishers Event Center, the Noblesville Event Center. We're working on a few projects up in Michigan. There's definitely a long list of venue projects, as well as house of worship customers.
Yeah, we've done some work together on that front.
Yep, and then all the way down to small conference rooms. We've done work for quite a few municipalities. There's a mandate going around that requires all of them to start recording and streaming. So we've done quite a few systems for municipalities, and it's definitely all over the map. Yeah. And I would just say again that we definitely couldn't do it without the engineering and the sales team and the technicians and everyone else that we have, because that's probably also the biggest thing you don't always think about. But personally, I love being on site, doing installs. I love doing all of that. Yeah. I don't remember the last time I was on site.
Same. Yeah. There actually is a thing with that, is that as our business has grown as well, you kind of have to a little bit kind of mourn and grieve what you have to give up. Yeah. Because there are parts of my job, because for about 10 years of the business, I did every task. Yeah. It was just me. And then now we have 9 people, and I also hire people that are better than me at things.
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
It's helpful to just be able to hand that off and have total confidence in them, but also you miss it a little bit.
You do.
When I open up AutoCAD and start to work around in it, I'm like, I actually really enjoyed this. Yeah. But I don't do it as often now. I'm doing more review and check and recommendations. But it's a little tough.
Yep. And it's the same thing in our team. Fortunately, we've had a lot of really strong people that that kind of even started with us, whether it was fresh out of college or some of them even younger than that, that really started with us and just have molded into who they are today, whether it's an installer or a system designer, or a system engineer, or even a salesperson. We've been really good at organically developing people, which I've been insanely proud of.
That's awesome,
because it's just something that has always been that's always been something that I've always had a passion for, is just helping to develop others. Yeah, and I think I would like to think we've done a really good job at that.
Yeah. So. Well, I've known you for quite a while, and I've seen your company grow, and I've met a lot of the people that you work with, and it's all great people with, a high skill level, but then also just someone you can have a conversation with, and I think that's important on jobs too, is just being able to easily communicate with people and get the job done. So
we're definitely in an industry where we're not always known for our communications.
Yeah.
Which is funny, because
what you do is, that's funny. Now, with where you're at currently, like you said, 60 employees, 3 locations, like where do you see Force Tech going from here?
It's funny. I would just say there is a lot, there's still a lot to be done. So, every single year we're sitting there thinking, oh, they can't build any more event centers in Indiana, but then they still do.
Then they do, right.
But we're definitely growing horizontally as well as vertically. We're in the process right now of building an IT division. We recently acquired an IT company, and that's very much becoming part of what we do. This system is a great example of, every single signal on the system passes through a network at some point.
Yeah.
So, we've also had to become networking experts, and when I say experts, I mean experts. Like the level of networking technology that we deal with, even compared to your typical corporate IT environment, is far more complex today than what it used to be. We're dealing with switches that need 10 gig plus. We're dealing with, IGMP. We're dealing with a lot of things that most normal people don't have to deal with on a network. So I would say that's also been one of the more unique things about who we are and who we've had to become, that, we've also had to become networking experts.
Right.
But
it's constantly evolving,
It is. It is.
And that's what keeps it fun too.
Yeah.
It's if you did the same thing over and over again and you didn't grow at all, then that would be a little mundane.
You definitely wouldn't be able to keep up with this industry.
That's true.
It's I can legitimately say I've been in the industry since the early days of analog, and absolutely nothing is done the same way.
Right.
It's very different.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Well, it's been really cool to get to know you over the years,
absolutely.
but then also having worked with you on a lot of things and seeing your company grow, and excited to work on things in the future together. And, but I appreciate you taking time to be a part of the podcast.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure.
Thanks so much, AJ.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's been another episode of the S.O.U.N.D Project. Thanks for being a part of it. Curious if you know what age you were when you decided what you wanted to do with your life. Please comment that below, and we'll see you next week.